Ahoy there, this is Zaefnyr, and well, today I'll be talking about my favorite subject, RPGs. You must have heard of them before, either when someone mentioned Skyrim or when the Dark Souls players tried to lynch the Witcher ones. First, let's define what an RPG is. A role-playing game, in its simplest form, is a game where you as a player assume the role of a character in a fictional setting within a narrative which promotes character development. The more we look into it, the more complicated it gets, especially so with video games. The original concept came in the form of tabletop RPGs where you roll dice with your friends while telling grand stories of your imagined adventures. Then came LARPing, or live-action role-playing, where people dress up in their imaginary setting to go on adventures outside. And then there's the video game scene. Early RPG examples that everyone is familiar with are Elder Scrolls and Fallout, mainly because those franchises are still developed and discussed to this day. However, many would argue, and in some way be right, that these two franchises' first and last launched games are vastly different while still remaining RPGs. Now, I know this makes me look like the biggest zoomer on the planet, but since I haven't experienced the older games in their full glory, I will not be talking about them. Instead, I will be comparing the more modern games, especially since more people would be familiar with the New Vegas Fallout 4 comparison than the Daggerfall ESO one. When we think of RPG video games, and I'm just gonna call them RPGs from now on because video games are exactly the point of this video, we have a few thought options. Stats, skills, talent trees. Is that what an RPG boils down to? For some gamers, it's much more than that. Avid fans of Fallout New Vegas love to tell you about how good the game is, and then you play the game and all you do is walk the Mojave Desert and listen to 20th century American music. So why would someone recommend a game that sounds like that? Well, the choices you make, the people you murder or outright ignore have consequences. It oftentimes isn't even that deep, but it's lovely to see small stuff like the faction system from this game. You pick the sexist enslavers, the corrupt bureaucrats, an ancient man living in a tube, or anarchy, and you must follow a quest line to see the courier's journey to an end, but if you step on the wrong people's toes, you might have Death Squad sent to you. All of these consequences of your actions are felt throughout the game, interacting with the right people and gaining fame or infamy, making you feel the importance of playing a role in the events of the game. The stats which govern skills help maintain the status quo of the classic role-playing game too. You got high luck, you'll do more crits and win more in casinos. High perception, well now you're good with energy guns and you can see enemies on the radar from further away. Strength makes you punch harder, agility makes you reload faster. All of this makes New Vegas into one of the good RPGs. But what about Fallout 4? Why do so many people see that Fallout 4 is a good game, but not a good Fallout? Well, to make that comparison, one would have to look at Fallout 3 as well. 3 and New Vegas are much more similar than 3 and 4. 3 has small arms and big arms, New Vegas has guns, energy, weapons, and explosives, while 4 has a different skill system. 3 and New Vegas have checks related to your character's skills, while 4 only has checks governed by the speech stat. Fallout 4 is very much an action game, much more than it is a role-playing game when compared to its predecessors, but the whole consequences of your actions bucket gets thrown out the window too. You're looking for your kidnapped kid some 200 years in the future, but you can't help looking for aluminum, screws and gears to build an awesome scrap metal house back home. I actually wrote that, Jesus Christ. The sense of urgency, while hard to replicate in games to begin with, fades very easily in Fallout 4. And the lack of factions that hate you or hit squads sent because of your karma, good or bad, really turned Fallout 4 into something more of an action game with light RPG mechanics or elements than the role-playing games that the OG fans know and love. Not a bad game, but a bad Fallout game. I know that Eurojank is a buzzword that someone invented to say that the European-made game they just played was not up to their standards, but bear with me and let's look at a bunch of Eurojank adventure RPGs that I have plenty of experience with, namely Risen 3 and Two Worlds 2. Risen 3 built upon the Piranha Bytes foundation. If Risen 1 was very gothic-like and Risen 2 was just some pirate game, Risen 3 gave us the crystal magic from the first game, the voodoo magic, the pirates and the natives from the second game, and introduced rune magic and iframes to the dodges to make it feel playable. Combat telegraphing is still trash, however. The game has 3 factions with their own quests, spells, identities, although the ending is always the same. Not much consequence apart from a bunch of quests where you have the choice between 2 rewards here and there, but the stats are fun to fiddle with. You have your normal stats that you level up with XP gained from combat or completing quests. These stats govern how much damage you do, how accurate you are, how powerful your magic is, or if you can pick someone's rocks or someone else's pockets. Permanent stat increase potions exist too, so alchemy, as well as many other skills you need to pay for and meet a certain stat threshold to be able to learn, is worth investing into. All in all, a fun RPG if you really like leveling up and exploring the game's skill mechanics and explore a pirate-themed world, really. But still, a Piranha Bytes game with all its jankily flourishing combat. Now, Tours 2 is a bit different. You can play instruments. Yep, still got it. The trend of killing stuff and doing quests for XP to ultimately increase your skills and stats is starting to be very obvious, as that's exactly what you will be doing in this game most of the time. I don't care much about saving my sister. Honestly, I don't even know if that's the actual plot of the game, because I'm here to play the damn flute and level up the spinning attack so I can clear the towns of guards more easily. AGAB. All guards are dead. There's nothing special when it comes to this game's writing, as the choice consequences are yet again not prevalent. Missing quests before you finish the game does not count, so this is pretty much like Fallout 4. It's definitely a game with some light RPG elements, some minigames and side quests here and there, a unique world that you might enjoy exploring, but it's definitely not the kind of hardcore RPG that you will sink hours into. But it's definitely not the kind of hardcore RPG that you will sink hours into just to understand the implications in the lore and remain scarred by the plot that you intervened into. Which brings me to CRPGs, or classic role-playing games. As I said at the beginning of the video, I will be focusing exclusively on the modern titles, despite this genre going way back to Interplay's Wasteland in 1988. So, In Exile Entertainment's Wasteland 3 from 2020. It's an isometric turn-based RPG with all the skills and perks and traits that one such game could have. You get XP for killing stuff and for completing quests, so the skeleton is there alright. The single best thing about this game, which could apply to the entire genre of CRPGs, is that the combat isn't complex. Accurate or intricate physics aren't important, so your budget permits itself to lean towards the writing department. This creates a great way to give you, the player, choices and different paths in the story. From what I know, there are two main endings in the game, and they aren't good ending, bad ending. You can go to the strip club and get a buff from practicing family-friendly gameplay with maybe not even individuals. You can recruit one of the bad dudes to your party because fuck it, and you can befriend a robot settlement because if you can, why not, right? There is faction reputation, and it's almost as important as the kiss-ass, smart-ass, and hard-ass skills. God, I love how they gave us these three instead of just speech, while the other skills are just as important in relevant conversations. I forgot to leave a note at the end of the Wasteland 3 section, so here it is. It's lovely to see that the CRPG formula and the best it has to offer was portrayed in a more accessible and modern manner. While Dragon Age might seem like one of the original action RPGs, it's actually very much not action at all. Please listen to me, heed my words well, do not think that this game is an action. Really, the only thing action about these games is the new animations from the second game onward. You command a party of characters, one of which is you, the main character. The others are story-related persons who contribute to the lore, the world and the setting with their backgrounds and personal quests. Maybe even with their agendas, but you know, it kind of depends on you to keep them around. They help in conversations too, depending on the task at hand, but in combat, they are the most useful. This is a real-time combat game that can be paused, so you can give orders to everyone in the party. You still have stats, skills, traits, a crafting system, item usage, gear, and XP for all those skills to unlock. You get XP from killing stuff and completing quests. I personally prefer this kind of combat, and while it's not prevalent in many games, RPGs are probably the only space you'll see it anyway. Your actions, or lack thereof, have consequences. In Origins, one of your party members can even turn on you if you recruit them and then refuse to forge a close friendship with them. And it makes sense given the initial meeting circumstances. Also in Origins, you have this lovely tutorial area where you learn your character's background and, well, as the game suggests, their origin. Mages start at the circle, each race comes from different places, and upon eventual return, depending on the background, will be greeted by different faces. You have to pick sides all the time after learning about the world, and then you have to live with the consequences of the actions of whoever you helped put in charge. That's a heavy load, isn't it? Origins is a great RPG, and hopefully the upcoming Dragon Age Dreadwolf will be on par with the first one. The other two titles have felt a little bit like filler content. You feel me? Next up would be Pillars of Eternity, a lovely game really. Made by Obsidian Entertainment, who, if you don't know from their aggressive marketing for Outer Worlds, were the creators of Fallout New Vegas. Yep, that's them. Anyway, Pillars, it has this charming old-style way of storytelling that many RPGs nowadays miss. Right as you start the game, you create a character without knowing a single detail of what you're choosing. I actually love this. It gives you a chance to explore the game's systems and their skill resetting too, so there's that. You then get a narration about where you are, what is happening, and what you are doing. This won't happen often in the game. However, it's always nice to observe it, and something similar happens in a few select spots where you need to climb up or down some places and would do better with a grappling hook, or you need to break down a wall or a boulder and you need to use a chisel to avoid potential damage to your party members. It's a fun menu to find, let me tell you that much. Now, killing stuff here only gives you XP until you've discovered all of the monster's resistances and attack values. After that, you get nothing from combat except for loot. I love this system as it discourages you from killing everything you see. It makes you complete quests in various different ways, as you'll get the same, if not more XP from solving situations in peace. Almost everything you say in a conversation has a certain tone to it, and you can develop a reputation for being honest or benevolent, for example, or any of the other available tones. For example, if you are shrewd, or I forget what it was called. If you're deceptive or a liar and you keep lying, you become a better liar, and it's easier to pass those checks in the future. I was honest and I tried to do a deceptive check. It did not work. These conversation tones are very important if you wish to create a paladin character, as the deity you choose to serve grants you better bonuses for following their teachings. Now that's a role. That's a role in a role-playing game. Believe it. Preach. The consequences of your actions are mainly limited to 2 choices in side quests, as the ending is always the same. Still, it gives the game's world flavor, and paired with the faction reputation system, as shallow as it is, makes this for a well-rounded RPG. Last but not least, let's have the talk surrounding ARPGs. The acronym stands for Action Role-Playing Games. Sure, but when you call a game an ARPG and not an action RPG, you most likely refer to Torchlight and Grim Dawn instead of You most likely refer to Torchlight and Grim Dawn or Diablo instead of Dark Souls, Dragon's Dogma, or I don't know, Skyrim? It's not really action. You get my point. Much like the term JRPG referring to a certain kind of game instead of just Japanese-made RPGs, because then Dark Souls would be a JRPG, but it's not. These games generally have a serviceable story, or even a pretty good plot, but the delivery of the game genre leaves much to be desired. You sure as hell might enjoy learning about the kinds of gods, the beginning of the end times, and the lore surrounding the Aether beings and the cult of Cthon, and reading every single book and journal you find in Grim Dawn. But that's not good delivery, and I mostly play it for the gameplay. You kill stuff, lots of rare stuff, lots of bossy stuff, and then you get gear stuffs as drops. With randomized bonuses, yes, as the script says. The dual class system, the simple stats, and the devotion system in Grim Dawn is pretty much distinctive among what ARPGs generally offer. You play for the stats and kill for the gear. You farm totems for the rare drops until you give up, because the drop rate for what you want is too small. But it's all in good fun because you're trying out this sick build from someone on the internet and you're alright. Skyrim. Did I talk about Skyrim? Can't believe I didn't talk about Skyrim. Well, next video is gonna be on Skyrim, so get ready for that. Most quests are fetch quests after you kill a boss or enough monsters somewhere, but otherwise they're just murder contracts. I guess you could take them like that, like the Witcher contracts, without the short story beforehand. Game does exactly what it promises within the genre, so I can't complain honestly. Largely the same thing goes for Torchlight 2. God, it's been so long since I played that game. Most of the fun comes from killing stuff, learning what skills do, trying out new skills upon leveling up, and gearing up with things relevant to what your build is trying to do. Torchlight has the classes set in stone, however, and I'm pretty sure the skill and stat systems are much simpler than what you have in Grim Dawn or Path of Exile, for example. But the core gameplay is there. You play for the stats and kill for the gear. All in all, I'd say I've accounted for all RPG types other than MMOs and JRPGs. MMOs attract the hate goblins, and I've never played a JRPG, so I'm unqualified to talk about them. From what we've seen, each RPG tries to do its own thing, and in the process pertains to a certain subgenre. As a result, each such subgenre has a few key components that make the game a good RPG in its own right. Now, the quality of individual RPGs comes separate from the RPG elements that the game shows. So while one such game could definitely have everything, it would be nothing more than a jack of all trades. Oh, it doesn't squeak now. Generally, you get XP from playing the game in order to increase your stats and get new skills, become better. Most of the time, there is gear. Looter RPGs and more often action or ARPGs have randomized loot to encourage action-focused gameplay. Some RPGs have skill checks in dialogues or other circumstances, making skills useful outside of combat as well. This usually appears in games other than ARPGs and promotes world building and rich storytelling. Some RPGs go down the path of introducing minigames. They can very much be fun and usually increase the feeling of how alive the world is in adventure RPGs. While I call them Eurojank RPGs too, I believe that Risen 3 and Tours 2 shine when it comes to the adventure archetype. What makes a good RPG is a question through which we can somewhat define what genre or subgenre a certain game is in. I define myself as thankful as you've watched the video to the end. Like and sub as more content's on the way. Follow the Instagram for occasional shitposts once every 3 fucking blue moons, and join the Discord for updates and discussions. Have a clear see.